Good morning from the Qaqortoq hotel. It's now 6:40 a.m. and I just had a look outside to check the weather, if it's foggy or not. Actually, it is not foggy this morning and the clouds look kind of okay, I would say. I mean, I can show you. So, like here, this mountain is around 300 meters high, I think, and it is partly covered in clouds. So I would say the cloud base layer is at about maybe 1,000 feet or maybe less, a bit less than 1,000 feet I would say, but it should clear up more the later the morning gets. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get the helicopter flight to Nanortalik today, and then tonight we'll have the return flight from Nanortalik to Narsarsuaq. It's scheduled to depart at 7 p.m. Yesterday that flight was actually cancelled, and actually that's why they rebooked us from the return flight yesterday to the return flight today, which is very convenient. But before we go to the heliport, which is like a 10-minute walk away, maybe even just 5 minutes, let's check out the breakfast, because this hotel serves a really good breakfast, I've heard, and it's included.
Breakfast was really decent and filling, and 1 hour later we were off to the heliport. The heliport is located in the east of the town and requires just a 10-minute walk from the hotel. The colored houses are truly special to Greenland and make this town look quite beautiful. We then reached the heliport, but it was a bit early and there was nothing to see except for this fuel truck. The site itself looked well maintained, but the building seemed to be coming of age. It doesn't matter too much though, because by 2025 a completely new airport with a 1,500 meter runway will start operations close to the town. I don't know whether the heliport will be closed then, but I could actually imagine it will remain open because it's located directly in the city, which is very convenient.
So, all checked in now for the flight to Nanortalik here from Qaqortoq. It's a bit delayed. Apparently they're flying from Narsarsuaq to Narsarsuaq right now, and then once they're here, the pilot will call the heliport in Nanortalik to see if the weather is okay to fly there, and if it is, then we're off to there. So now I'm just outside here at the heliport, waiting for the arrival so I can get nice footage of the helicopter arriving here. Also, check-in was kind of odd, like we didn't have to show our passports or anything. I guess she remembered us from yesterday maybe? Anyway, she just printed 2 slips of paper and that's basically our boarding pass. Apparently the helicopter just took off from Narsarsuaq like 5-7 minutes ago, so I'm waiting for its arrival here on top of this small hill. You have a great view of the heliport below.
And just a few minutes later the base started filling with a dropping noise as the helicopter appeared in the west and slowly turned towards the heliport. It's interesting how tiny it looks from afar, and you can only really comprehend its size once it gets closer. Oscar Yankee Hotel Uniform November is an Airbus Helicopter H155, formerly known as Eurocopter 155 Dauphin. It was built in 2007 and has quite an interesting history. Starting its career in India, it was then transferred to an operator in Mexico before it got delivered to Air Greenland in July 2022. There are 10 passenger seats and it has a range of just over 400 nautical miles. As the helicopter engine powered down, the ground crew was waiting with the baggage front loader. 20 minutes later it was time to board. I hadn't been on a helicopter for 2 years and I was quite excited for this. The flight was gonna be full, although one seat was just used by a set of boxes. Above your seat you find the most important thing for the ride, the earmuffs. Those helicopters get pretty loud. After all passengers had settled in and the safety briefing was done, the pilot fired up the engine. The rotor blades were now in full swing, but we had to wait for another 3 minutes until the pilot had completed his checks. But finally we lifted off the ground and waved goodbye to the town of Qaqortoq. We left the town straight to the southeast on a direct route towards Nanortalik. Flying down the coast, we passed the ends of fjords, peninsulas with rocky hills and many small islands. Presumably due to the low cloud base, the pilot decided to fly at a very low altitude for the entire flight. This was really nice as it allowed me to watch the landscape very closely, of course including a lot of icebergs on the way. The flight itself was pretty uneventful and the open cabin design allowed a view out the front as well. About 20 minutes after we had left Qaqortoq, we started a left turn into the bay that is home to the town of Nanortalik. On approach, we flew over the MS Insignia, a cruise ship that can carry around 700 passengers. Welcome to Nanortalik. Flight time was 24 minutes from liftoff to touchdown. Now here some hill with a view of the heliport. And the helicopter is about to depart again to, I think it goes back to Qaqortoq or maybe directly to Narsarsuaq, I don't know. Anyway, I really hope it's going to be back later tonight for our flight to Narsarsuaq. Fingers crossed, otherwise we have to spend the night here in some hotel. I think there is a hotel here. Anyway, yeah, so that's gonna be at 7 p.m. tonight. Now it's 10 a.m. so we have like 9 hours to spend here in Nanortalik. The helicopter departed and all we could do now was hope it would come back in the evening. As it slowly disappeared in the distance, the area went quiet again. We then made our way to the town. The town of Nanortalik is Greenland's southernmost town with a population above 1,000 people. In the Greenlandic language, the name Nanortalik means a place with many polar bears. And while I'd love to see a polar bear in the wild, let's just hope we won't encounter one walking around here. We wandered around town for a bit, went to the supermarket, visited the open-air museum and had some lunch. After lunch it was time for a hike. We left the town towards the northwest and found a small footpath that led us up the 308-meter high Qaqortoq hill. The skies in the afternoon were cloudless and with a temperature between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius, the conditions were just perfect for hiking. The views from the top were overwhelming and they truly speak for themselves. The south of Greenland is extremely mountainous and with all the bare landscape in fact offers some excellent climbing sites. There are mountains in this region with climbing walls that are 1,000 meters high. Really quiet up here. The local hill. It's a 300-meter high mountain hill, sort of, and you can see the surrounding area. It's very quiet as well. The only thing you can really hear is the wind, and I think we had some cracking of icebergs, so that's it. So now we're heading back to the heliport down there. It will take about an hour to walk back, and then our flight is in just less than 3 hours, so it should be fine. An hour and a half later, we were back in town and slowly headed towards the heliport. It was still an hour to departure, and given the good weather conditions, we were quite optimistic that the helicopter would come and we would make it back to Narsarsuaq today. The heliport offers a nice seating area and was still almost empty. And of course you have an excellent view of the helipad itself. 40 minutes later we heard the familiar dropping sound fill up the air. The helicopter approached from the east and turned over the water before landing right in front of us. Boarding started, and since it is free seating, I hoped there would still be a window seat available when I got there. Turned out there was a window seat and I felt very lucky. After a couple of minutes standing around warming up the engine and working checklists, we finally lifted off the ground. You can't really feel the takeoff, it's more like you're suddenly airborne and you're wondering how you got there. We turned towards the northeast, and the golden colors of the sunset in its early stages promised great views on the flight. We were climbing higher, and the icebergs actually looked even more impressive from above. Given all the terrain around, I had wondered throughout the day if we would follow the fjords or go right over the mountains. Well, let's just say I would soon get my answer. We headed towards that majestic mountain range and soon flew right over it. It was an incredible experience. The H155 helicopter has a service ceiling of 15,000 feet. I estimated the mountains to be slightly over 1,000 meters high, between 3,000 and 4,000 feet. So we could theoretically go much higher. Looking around the cabin with its big windows all over the place, I actually felt very small in comparison to the mountains. Before I came to Greenland, I actually had no idea just how many mountains there were, especially in the south. I'm pretty sure there are some peaks here on which never anyone has set foot. As we passed over a highland, a few clouds showed up and we stayed right below the cloud base. About 20 minutes after departure from Nanortalik, we reached the fjord that's leading up to Narsarsuaq and followed it all the way to the airport. We approached the airport from the south but had to circle around to the opposite direction to land on runway 24. But I didn't mind at all since the downwind leg provided a great view of the airport. We turned base over a couple of hills and then started the final approach for runway 24. Welcome back then to Narsarsuaq. The atmosphere felt really relaxed in the sunset and we walked out through the terminal. So, just landed back in Narsarsuaq. What an incredible flight that was. I mean, I didn't expect it. It went straight over the mountains. Those are high mountains. Anyway, it was a spectacular flight. And now we're here back in Narsarsuaq, right in time before our flight tomorrow to Qaqortoq, which is good. And now we're heading off to the hotel because they have a buffet. It's kind of cheap, it's like 100 krona, and later we're gonna head back to the hostel. The buffet and hotel was nothing very special, but still quite okay and a good way to end the day in the sunset by the window. I hope you enjoyed the impressions from the 2 helicopter flights. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to find out how I departed Greenland from Narsarsuaq. Until then, enjoy your travels.